Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the program. It's Tuesday, September 2nd, coming to you live from the studio in Seoul. I'm Kim Mo-kyun. Before we get started, these are the stories we're following at the top of the hour. As Typhoon Maysak approaches Korea's southernmost island of Jeju, flights and ferries have been disrupted. All flights in and out of the Jeju for the remainder of the day have been canceled. South Korea's total number of COVID-19 cases climbs above the 20,000 mark. The number of new infections has shown a slight decline in the past few days, but authorities say it's too early to let our guard down. And Washington has warned Pyongyang against continued activities to develop its nuclear and missile programs. It also said those aiding the regime could be subject to U.S. and international sanctions. We begin with the latest on Typhoon Maysak. As the storm closes in on the southern resort island of Jeju, flight and ferry operations are being severely disrupted. According to Korea Airports Corporation, all scheduled flights in and out of Jeju on Wednesday will be canceled. Around 15 ferry connections between the mainland and Jeju have also been restricted, and hiking on Jeju's Hallasan mountain is not allowed until further notice. Health authorities have raised the typhoon advisory to a warning for all of Jeju Island from 10 a.m. The Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters also raised its emergency countermeasure levels to the second highest level to gear up for possible damage. It says it's keeping close tabs on the typhoon, which is expected to head up from Jeju and influence all of South Korea by Thursday. Up to 400 millimeters of rain and strong winds are forecast for the entire country over the next couple of days. South Korea on Wednesday reported 267 new cases of COVID-19. Among them, 253 were local transmissions, with more than 70% coming from the greater Seoul area. This brings the total number of cases in the country to 20,449. The number of daily new infections has been below the 300 mark for the fourth straight day after the number peaked at over 400 last Thursday. But the daily tally has been in the triple digits for 20 days now. The number of critically ill patients reached 124 on Wednesday, and there were 2 additional deaths. South Korea's total COVID-19 infections surpassed the 20,000 mark this week. The daily tally has been on a downward trend for 5 days in a row, but health authorities say it's still early to relax. Our Choi Jung-yoon tells us why.
7 months since the first case. Now there's a COVID-19 caseload of more than 20,000 in South Korea. However, since the country's daily new infections entered a triple-digit uptick last month, it's recently been on a downtrend.
The number of newly confirmed patients has been decreasing over the past 5 days, but with the testing capacity during the weekend affecting the total number, there's a need to closely watch the situation.
Signs that show there are a considerable number of silent transmissions are keeping health authorities on their toes. Over the past 2 weeks, 24.3% of cases are under investigation, looking for their original source of transmission. This means 1 out of 4 patients don't know where they contracted the virus. With people showing little or no symptoms at all, so-called silent patients moving around the city, there have been a series of infections at churches, sports facilities, and music academies.
There can't be a guarantee the situation we face now is the start of a crisis or the midpoint. We hope the tightened social distancing level of 2.5 would be adhered to perfectly.
Strong social distancing could be the only key to stopping another big wave.
Let's go back to normal and things are okay after September 9th? That's a big no. With South Korea's Thanksgiving holiday at the end of this month, there could be a third wave after many people move around.
When people gather, the virus spreads. And when groups don't come together, the virus lets up. That's what experts say people need to keep in mind and continue to minimize their social activities and meetings. Choi Jung-yoon, Arirang News.
Days have passed since thousands of trainee doctors across South Korea launched an indefinite walkout. But the government and the country's young doctors still can't see eye to eye on the government's planned health reform plans. Our Kim Hyo-sun reports.
The South Korean government and the country's medical practitioners continue to clash over the former's medical reform plans that include expanding the number of medical school admissions. Heads of medical students and trainee doctors associations launched an emergency body of young doctors this week to counter the government's tough stance on the nationwide walkout by thousands of trainee doctors. They've been urging the government to withdraw its plans and renegotiate from square one. On top of this, they're also calling for the government to stipulate its plans in writing before they return to work.
We pledge to immediately go back to work once we reach an agreement with the government to stipulate in writing its plan to scrap policies and to renegotiate from the start.
The government, on the other hand, says it will engage in candid dialogue if trainee doctors come up with a suitable alternative.
The government has already unconditionally halted forwarding policies on expanding the medical school admissions quota to the education ministry, and all options will be open after we overcome the COVID-19 crisis.
During the strike, the government is also mulling over dispatching army doctors to private hospitals. The health ministry reportedly made a request to the defense ministry, and more than 20 army doctors are expected to be mobilized across infectious disease designated hospitals in Seoul and Incheon. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
South Korea's finance minister says a second round of COVID-19 relief handouts would be more efficient if done on a selective basis rather than being given to every citizen. Speaking to local news outlet KBS on Tuesday, Hong Nam-gi said it would be more damaging financially as social distancing has been raised to the second highest level. However, he added a second round of emergency handouts is inevitable. He said customized support should be provided for small businesses, the self-employed, and the recently unemployed or low-income families facing difficulties. He says discussions will take place later this week. With the abrupt resignation of Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, the country's chief cabinet secretary Yoshihide Suga is looking most likely to step into Abe's shoes. Japan's Liberal Democratic Party has decided to hold an abridged election with ballots cast only by lawmakers and 3 representatives from each of the 47 prefectural chapters. It means not all party members get to vote. The new format gives the advantage to Suga, a candidate who is close to Abe and has wide-ranging support among LDP lawmakers. According to Japanese media, the decision came as Tokyo does not want Abe's midterm resignation due to ill health to create a political vacuum during the COVID-19 pandemic. The United States has issued an advisory against North Korea's continued activities to secure equipment and materials for its nuclear and missile development programs. It also warned those aiding the regime that they may be subject to U.S. and international sanctions. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
In its latest warning titled North Korea Ballistic Missile Procurement Advisory, the U.S. government on Tuesday explained Pyongyang's deceptive techniques employed in the operation and support of its weapons programs. According to the advisory jointly issued by the State, Treasury, and Commerce Departments, the North may be continuing and possibly evolving activities to secure equipment and materials for its nuclear and missile development programs. It also warned that those aiding the rogue regime, even unknowingly, may be subject to U.S. and international sanctions. The advisory includes a list of 6 North Korean entities that have been identified and sanctioned for weapons procurement activities. This includes Korean Yeongbong General Corporation, which it said was a defense conglomerate specializing in acquisition for Pyongyang's defense industries. It also delved into how the North seeks to procure materials and equipment that are prohibited under various U.S. and UN sanctions, including via officials who operate from North Korean diplomatic missions or trade offices, as well as third country nationals and foreign companies. North Korea has been and remains subject to various U.S. and UN sanctions that followed its nuclear and missile tests. The North's last nuclear test and its 6th was conducted in September 2017, around a year before the historic summit between U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. However, many believe the regime may have resumed its nuclear development program after the second Kim-Trump summit in 2019, which ended without a deal. The first joint advisory by the three U.S. departments comes ahead of the November presidential election. Many political observers say military provocations, especially a resumption of long-range missile tests, may undermine President Trump's argument that his engagement with Kim has kept the U.S. out of a war with the regime. 이승재, Arirang News.
The United States warns that China likely plans to double its stockpile of nuclear warheads this decade, including those designed to be carried atop ballistic missiles that can reach the U.S. As part of its annual China Military Power Report given to Congress Tuesday, the Pentagon says China's nuclear warhead stockpile is estimated to be in the low 200s, but is projected to at least double as China expands and modernizes its nuclear forces. Among them, the number of nuclear warheads on land-based ICBMs capable of threatening the U.S. is reportedly 100, but it's expected to grow to roughly 200 over the next 5 years. South Korea's consumer prices jumped 0.7% on year in August, the largest growth in 5 months. According to Statistics Korea, the consumer price index this month stood at 105.5. That's also up 0.6% from the previous month. The agency says the growth was due to a rise in prices of agricultural goods following a record-long monsoon season and the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Agriculture, livestock, and fishery product prices rose 10.6% on year, marking the biggest rise since 2017. South Korea is seeing an export surplus in its music-related sectors. The newly released figures come a matter of days after K-pop superstars BTS became the first South Korean artist to top the Billboard Hot 100 singles chart. According to the Bank of Korea on Wednesday, the country recorded a surplus of $18.4 million for music, video, and related services in June, recording a surplus for the 9th straight month. The trade index for this category had been rising for almost 5 years until last September, when the surplus flattened out. Celebrating the 24th birthday of BTS member Jungkook, Chinese fans wrapped the outside of a nearly 400-meter-long KTX train with images of the singer. This is the first time in 16 years such a commercial advertisement has covered the exterior of a KTX train. Chinese fans also held an online fireworks event in Busan, which is a city where the singer grew up. The birthday event was streamed online for around 10 minutes, with fans explaining that it was aimed to provide comfort to the BTS fan base across the world during the pandemic.
Good morning. Super Typhoon Maysak is located south of Seokgipo in Jeju, and it's moving toward the island at 22 kilometers an hour. And it will pass near waters of Jeju this evening and will trek towards South Korea's eastern regions. For a closer look, Maysak will reach close to Seokgipo an hour earlier than expected at around 6 p.m. before making a landfall in Busan by 2 a.m. on Thursday. Then it will pass near Gangneung in Gangwon-do province by 8 a.m. Right now, it's raining heavily in the Gyeongsang-do provinces and surrounding regions, including Daegu and Busan, with heavy rain advisories issued there. Typhoon alerts are also in place for land and waters of Jeju. Those, along with related advisories, will expand as the day moves along. Maysak could trigger storm surges as the typhoon is approaching during Korea's highest predicted sea level of the year. And from today, the East Coast will see more than 400 millimeters of downpours into Thursday, along with strong gusts. The winds could be strong enough to uproot trees, so please be extra careful. Temperature-wise, highs will be in the mid to upper 20s with no heat alerts in place. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
That's a wrap for us at the hour on Arirang News. We'll be back with more of the day's headlines at noon Korea time, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching and goodbye.